All right. So, broadcasting live from Iowa again. Okay. Here we go. There was a night, and I'm not going to go into the details of that night, but I need you to know that there was a night where I almost did not make it. After failing the NCLEX for the second time, I hit a place so dark that I almost became a statistic. And right now, before I say another word, I want to take a moment of silence for those who went to that same dark place and didn't make it out. So let's take 5 seconds at least and have that moment of silence. All right. This episode is for them. And this episode is for you too, or at least the one listening right now, who's sitting in your car or lying in your bed or staring at a screen that just told you that you failed. The one whose mother's voice is playing on repeat in your head, telling you you're not smart enough. The one who's wondering if you should just quit. Don't you dare. My name is Nurse Mindy. I failed the NCLEX RN twice, and this is my nurse warrior story. Welcome to Real Talk with Nurse Mindy, part of the battle-tested nursing family. This is our Nurse Warrior segment, the segment where we tell the real stories, the raw stories, the ones that don't get posted on Instagram with a cute stethoscope and a filter. These are the stories of what it actually takes, what it actually costs, and what it actually means to earn those letters behind your name. And today I am not interviewing anyone. Nurse Jan had to reschedule, and we will get her rescheduled just as soon as possible. But today, it's just me and you. Because this story, my story, is one I've been carrying for a long time. And I think it's time to let it out. But first, let's handle the important stuff, shall we? My disclaimer for this episode is I am a registered nurse. I am not your nurse. I am not your doctor, and I am not your therapist. Nothing I share here today constitutes medical advice, mental health advice, or a substitute for professional care. This is my personal story, shared for educational and inspirational purposes. This episode discusses mental health struggles, including a period of severe crisis. If you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out. Call or text 988. They are available 24/7, and that's for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Or you can text the crisis text line at text HOME, HOME, to 741-741. The National Alliance in Mental Illness, or the NAMI helpline, is 1-800-950-6264. You are not alone, and asking for help is not weakness. It's the bravest thing a warrior can do, okay? This episode also discusses ADHD, anxiety, and their impact on testing and academic performance. If anything I describe resonates with you or someone you know, I encourage you to speak with a licensed healthcare provider about evaluation and support. Additionally, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely mine. They do not represent the views of any employer, institution, or organization I have been affiliated with. Any references to individuals, past instructors, family members, or others are shared from my personal perspective and recollection only and are not intended to defame, discredit, or harm anyone. This podcast is produced for informational and inspirational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical, psychological, or legal counsel. All right? Here we go. So let me take you back, way back, before the scrubs, before the stethoscope, before battle-tested nursing was even a thought in my mind, before any of it. Nursing was never my childhood dream. I didn't grow up playing with toy medical kits or telling people I was going to be a nurse when I grew up. Nursing didn't find me in a classroom or in a hospital. Nursing found me in a war zone. I was working in support of our military in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I'm not going to go deep into that story today because I told it last week or the week before last. But what I need you to understand is that is where I discovered something about myself that changed the entire trajectory of my life. I discovered that when everything around me was chaos, when the world was literally exploding, I could stay calm. I could think. I could react. When other people froze, something in me switched on. And I realized for the first time in my life that I had a gift. That in the middle of the worst moments, I could be the person who held it all together. And something whispered to me, whether that was God or intuition or just the truth finally catching up with me, but something said, you're supposed to be a nurse. So I came home and I chased it. Now, here's where I need to get real, because I didn't come home to a parade and a cheerleading squad. I came home and told people I was going to be a nurse, and the very first response I got from my own mother was a laugh. Not a ha-ha, that's funny laugh. A laugh that carried a message. And the message was, you're not smart enough to be a nurse. My own mother. And I want to sit with that for a second, because I know that there are people listening right now who have heard something similar. Maybe it wasn't about nursing. Maybe it was about college or a career or a dream you shared with someone you trusted. And they looked you dead in the face and told you that you couldn't, that you weren't enough, that people like you don't do things like that. And that voice, it doesn't just visit once. It moves in. It sets up camp. It becomes the background music of your life. And you don't even realize it's playing until you're in your darkest moment and suddenly it's the loudest thing in the room. You're not smart enough. That voice followed me through every semester, every clinical, every exam. And it was screaming. The night I failed the NCLEX for the second time. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My husband at the time, he wasn't supportive either. And I want to be fair here. I want to be honest, because I wasn't a great wife during nursing school. School came first. I was consumed by it. I was studying every waking moment, and he didn't get much of me during those years. So I'll own that, my part in that. But I also need to be honest that he made everything harder. The bills were barely getting paid. The house wasn't being kept up. Dinner wasn't happening. There was no, I've got the home front, you go study. It was more like resentment and silence. And trying to learn pharmacology while your home life is falling apart, that's a special kind of impossible. But I pushed forward because I had to, because something was driving me. And that thing was bigger than my circumstances. Now, I didn't start small. I went straight for the top. I enrolled in an RN to BSN program, the best nursing school in the city where I was living, and I worked hard to get in. I raised my GPA. I did what I had to do, and I got in. For a while, it was working. I was making A's and B's. I was holding my own, I thought. Or I was going more like, look at me, maybe I am smart enough. And then my 4th semester hit like a freight train. I had an OB-PEDS teacher, our instructor, who, and I'll be respectful, but I'll be honest, gave us conflicting resources and conflicting information. When we brought concerns to her, we were essentially told to figure it out. We tried to escalate. We were told to stay in our lanes because a merger was happening at the school and nobody wanted to rock the boat. Nearly half of our cohort didn't survive that semester. And there was a moment, one specific moment, that I will never forget. I was taking my last final of that semester and I ran out of time, with 20 questions left unanswered. Not because I didn't know the material, because of distractions happening in front of me in the classroom that I couldn't block out. I didn't know it then. I wouldn't know it for years. But I was 44 years old when I was finally diagnosed with ADHD with severe trauma. And looking back, that moment, running out of time on that final, unable to filter out the chaos around me, that was ADHD. That had been ADHD my entire life, affecting everything, and nobody caught it. Not one teacher, not one professor, not one counselor. For decades. I failed 2 classes that semester and I was dismissed from the BSN program. Dismissed. Kicked out. Done. And I remember the shame of that. The feeling of like, I was right there. I was so close. And now I had to start over? Now what? I told myself I couldn't go through this shit again. But here's the thing about warriors. And this is important. Warriors don't always charge straight ahead. Sometimes the bravest move is to pivot. So I transferred to another school in the area to complete my LPN. And I was fortunate, truly blessed, because the credits I had earned in the BSN program were rigorous enough that the LPN school accepted them. All of them. That almost never happens. Normally, nursing credits don't transfer like that, but someone at the school looked at my transcripts, saw where I'd been, recognized the caliber of the program I'd come from, and said, we'll take these. That was grace. Undeserved, unexpected grace from people who didn't have to extend it. So I only had to take the classes I'd failed. But I'm going to be honest, even though it was a shorter road, part of me felt defeated. I had started in a BSN program. I was supposed to be getting my bachelor's degree. And now I was getting my LPN. It felt like a demotion. It felt like proof that my mother was right. I know now that wasn't the truth. I know now that the LPN was a stepping stone, not a step down. But in that moment, it stung. Did I think about quitting? No. And I'll tell you why. I had too much riding on this, too much sacrifice, too many nights studying, too much time away from my life. And honestly, I couldn't let my mom win. I know that sounds petty, and maybe it is. But sometimes the fuel that keeps you going isn't pure and noble. Sometimes it's spite and stubbornness. And you know what? That fuel burns just fine too. Graduation came, and I felt relieved, but the celebration was muted. My marriage was unhappy. I knew the LPN was just a stop on the road, not the destination. I was proud, but restless. The journey wasn't over. Although it should have been. But it wasn't. So let's talk about the NCLEX, the big one, the gatekeeper. The test that stands between every nursing school graduate and the career they sacrificed everything for. I studied. I studied the way I thought I was supposed to, the way everyone tells you to. Practice questions, content review, flashcards, hours upon hours upon hours. And I showed up on test day thinking I was ready. I wasn't ready. The NCLEX doesn't test what you memorized. It tests what you think. And I didn't know that yet. I was answering questions the way I'd answered questions in school, looking for the right answer on paper. But the NCLEX doesn't work like that. The NCLEX asks you to prioritize, to critically think under pressure, to apply knowledge in ways that feel unfamiliar even when you know the content's cold. And the computer shut off, and I drove home, and I waited, and I got that result. It was a fail. The first fail hit hard, but I could rationalize it. A lot of people fail the first time. I told myself, this is normal. I'll regroup. I'll study harder. I'll get it next time. And that's exactly what I did. I signed up for a review course. I poured myself back in it. I was determined. I was focused. I was going to prove the first time was a fluke. Now, I didn't have that problem when I took my LPN NCLEX. That NCLEX, I didn't study for it all, and I passed, and it gave me false confidence. It made me cocky. It made me think that I had this, even when I didn't. That first fail hurt. I had already had a job lined up and everything. And I had to call him and tell him otherwise. You know how embarrassing that is? Humiliating? The second attempt felt different going in. I felt more prepared, more confident. I thought I'd cracked the code. I took all questions, all times. Every time I took it, I took all the questions. And the first and second time that I took that test, I walked out of there thinking, oh my God, I failed. I didn't know anything on the test. It was Greek. The questions were on things I had never studied before, which they warned us about that. They warned us. But it didn't sink in. It didn't. And I paid. I paid. The computer shut off again after all the questions. And I drove home again. And I did the Pearson VUE trick again. And I got my second fail. And that's when everything collapsed. Not slowly, not gradually. Everything all at once. The second fail wasn't just a test result. It was confirmation. Confirmation of every terrible thing I'd ever believed about myself. Confirmation of every word my mother had ever spoken to me. Confirmation that I had wasted years of my life, sacrificed a marriage, put myself through hell for nothing. You're not smart enough. That voice wasn't whispering anymore. It was roaring. I sat in my house alone, and I went to a place that I cannot fully describe to you. A place so dark, so helpless, so utterly devoid of light that I almost didn't come back from it. And I'm not going to go into the specifics of that night because I'm ashamed. Although for a long time I was. But because I don't want the details of my darkest moment to become a blueprint for somebody else who's hurting. What I will tell you is this. I was in crisis. Real, clinical, life-threatening crisis. And the only reason I'm sitting here right now talking into this microphone is because something, whether it's God, grace, stubbornness, I don't know what to call it, something pulled me back from the edge. I reached out. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Harder than Iraq, harder than Afghanistan, harder than any exam or any failure. Asking for help when you feel like you don't deserve to be helped, that is the hardest battle a warrior will ever fight. But I fought it, and I'm here. If you're in that place right now, if you're hearing this and you're in that dark room, I need you to hear me. Call 988. Text HOME to 741-741. Tell someone. Tell anyone. You don't have to fight this alone, and you don't have to have it figured out before you ask for help. Just reach out. That's all. Just reach out. In the aftermath of that crisis, I started working with a therapist. A real one. Not just someone to vent to. Someone who dug in. Someone who asked the right questions. And it was through that process that at 44 years old, I was diagnosed with ADHD with severe trauma overlay. And when I tell you that diagnosis changed everything, I mean everything. Suddenly, my whole life made sense. The struggles in school, the running out of time on tests, the inability to hear or to filter out the distractions, the way that my brain would hyper-focus on one thing and completely lose track of everything else. The way I could perform brilliantly in a crisis, because that's where ADHD actually gives you the advantage in high stimulation environments, but fall apart in a quiet testing room where my brain had nothing to latch onto. The NCLEX failures, they weren't about intelligence. They were about a brain that processes differently. A brain that nobody ever had bothered to evaluate properly. And I want to say something to every adult out there who's struggling and doesn't know why. Every adult who was told that they were lazy or not applying themselves or not living up to their potential. Get evaluated. Get evaluated. Today, not tomorrow, if you can. ADHD in adults, especially in women, is massively underdiagnosed. And it doesn't look like a hyperactive little boy bouncing off the walls. It looks like a 40-year-old woman running out of time on a final, although I was not 40 at the time. It looks like a brilliant nursing student who can handle a battlefield, but can't sit still long enough to finish a multiple choice exam. Once I had the diagnosis, though, I had tools, I had medication and strategies, accommodations that I was entitled to, but never knew to ask for. Well, that ain't true. I take that back. Accommodations were offered to us, but I was ashamed of needing help in nursing school, so I never asked for it. I never took advantage of it. And like I said, my diagnosis didn't come until I was 44. I'm only 47 now. I had already been a nurse for multiple years. And for the first time after that diagnosis, I stopped blaming myself. Not for all of it. I still own my mistakes, my choices, my part in everything. But I stopped believing that I was fundamentally broken. I wasn't broken. My brain just worked differently, and differently isn't deficient. So, my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, we were driving home from Sam's one day, and it was 6 months after I had taken the test the second time. 6 months. And during that 6 months, I didn't think about the NCLEX. I didn't think about rescheduling. I didn't think about nothing. About work, yes. I was working as an LPN. I was working as a nurse. I concentrated on that. I concentrated on my boyfriend and the life that we were building and the relationship that we were building, and concentrated on getting my divorce finalized. I didn't have time to really focus on the NCLEX, but I'm glad that I didn't, because I needed the break. And on the way home from Sam's one day, my husband, who I had told after the second fail, I begged him, I said, please don't let me quit. If I start talking about quitting, stop me. Remind me of why I'm doing this. Don't let me quit. And he didn't. He asked me one question on the way home from Sam's that day. He asked me if I had thought about when I was going to take the test again. And to be honest, it hadn't even crossed my mind. Never crossed my mind. So, I got back up. Again. Because that's what warriors do. But this time was different. This time I wasn't studying harder. I was studying smarter. I was studying as the real me. Well, as the real me as I could. I looked up those highly recommended Mark K lectures. And I joined another NCLEX prep boot camp. But this time when I studied in blocks. I'd study for a while, take a break, go do something else for a while, come back, revisit it, go over it. So I would block it off in order to study. And something else different than I did, when I got there to the testing center, I got there a little bit early for the third attempt. You know, by this time it's 7 months. 7 months since I had taken it the last time. And I was sitting there in my car, and I had 3 songs prepared for me to listen to before I went in. And I turned the music up as loud as it would go. And I sang along at the top of my lungs, and I was dancing in my car, just singing. And the first song that I listened to and sang to was Unstoppable by Sia. The second song I listened to was The Champion by Carrie Underwood. And the third song that I listened to was The Climb by Miley Cyrus. Now, each one of those songs have particular encouraging and motivational lyrics. Lyrics that I was able to apply to my life in that particular time. So I'm singing there, right? And I'm going, I'm dancing, I'm singing, I'm having probably looking crazy to everybody around me going in. Okay, because I got some crazy looks, but I didn't care. I didn't care not one bit. I was trying to get my mindset right. So I walk into that testing center for that third time and I sat down and I take all questions again. But this time it's a different format. This time it's the next generation format. The first time I've ever taken it like that. They provided me with case study style questions. And my ADHD brain really liked those type questions because I had more context. I had more information to go by in order to answer those questions. I wasn't going down rabbit holes or anything like or trying to critically think and put words into the questions that didn't need to be there. I felt more confident this time. When the computer shut off, I drove home and I waited. I did not do the Pearson VUE trick. I took the test on a Friday. I could get my results on that following Monday, but I didn't even want them then. I didn't stress about it. I wasn't even thinking about the results really. I didn't want that disappointment again. So I waited. I waited until I was able to pay my $7.95 or whatever it was back then to get the results. But I didn't do that right away either. I waited until Tuesday. My boyfriend at the time, now husband, he was recovering from a broken leg and he was over on the couch and I was in the dining room at the dining table with my computer. And I finally get my results and it says passed. I passed the NCLEX RN on my third attempt. After everything, after the BSN dismissal, after the LPN pivot, after 2 fails, after the darkest night of my life, after a diagnosis, no, not even that. That came later. That came decades too late. But it was after a mother who said I wasn't smart enough. And after or during a marriage that didn't survive after all of it, I passed. And I was crying. Big alligator tears started rolling. Ugly crying. I was ugly crying. I couldn't think. I couldn't talk. I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't do any of it. My boyfriend sitting over on the couch. He sees me crying. He hears me and he gets up and he gets on his little knee scooter and he scoots over and he was like, did you fail? He didn't know what the tears were for. He couldn't tell. And I couldn't talk. All I could do was through blurry eyes is take my mouse and I circled the area where I thought the word pass was because I couldn't see. I was crying that hard. And it said pass. And I looked at him and he started crying too. Because he's seen how hard I had worked. He's seen and knew what it meant to me for me to see that word. And see, the third time I took it, I didn't tell anybody that I was going to take it again. He was the only one that I told. That way I didn't have to face disappointment with anybody else. Do you know how heavy that is? That whole day was nothing but happy tears. I didn't leave the house that day. I just reveled in the feeling that finally, I can add those RN letters behind my name. They didn't just represent a license. They represented every single thing I had survived to earn them. Now, let me give you the lesson in all this, because this isn't just a story. This is a teaching moment. And I wouldn't be Nurse Mindy if I didn't break it down for you. Lesson 1. Failure is data, not destiny. Every time I failed, I learned something. The first fail taught me that memorization isn't mastery. The second fail taught me that something deeper was going on, something I couldn't just push through with more hours and more flashcards. Without those failures, I have ever gotten the ADHD diagnosis, even though it came years later? I never would have found the tools that actually worked for my brain, maybe. Failure wasn't the enemy. Failure was just the messenger. Lesson 2. The people who doubt you are not your audience. My mother's voice almost destroyed me. Almost. But it didn't. And here's what I've learned. The people who tell you that you can't, they're not speaking about your future. They're speaking about their own limitations, their own fears, their own regrets. When someone tells you you're not smart enough, what they really are saying is, I wasn't brave enough to try, and it scares me that you are. You don't owe your dreams to the opinions of people who've never chased their own, no matter who they are, no matter if they're your own parents. Lesson 3. Mental health is not optional. It is mission critical. It almost killed me that I didn't have support. It almost killed me that I thought I had to be strong enough to handle everything alone. And the nurses are the worst at this. We take care of everyone else and neglect ourselves. We treat mental health like it's a luxury. It's not. It's oxygen. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot fight a war when you're bleeding out internally. If you're struggling, if you're not okay, get help. Not tomorrow. Not after the exam, not after clinicals, now. Lesson 4. A pivot is not a failure. Going from a BSN program to an LPN wasn't a step down. It was a strategic repositioning. When I was overseas, they called it a tactical withdrawal. You pull back not because you're losing, but because you need to regroup and come back stronger. That's what the LPN was. That's what every setback can be if you let it. Lesson 5. You may be fighting a battle you don't even know about. Undiagnosed ADHD stole years from me. Years of struggle, years of shame, years of believing I was stupid when my brain was simply different. If something feels off, if you're working harder than everyone else and still falling behind, please investigate. Advocate for yourself. Push for answers. You deserve to know what you're actually dealing with so that you can fight it properly. Lesson 6. Your story isn't over because of one chapter. The NCLEX is one test. Nursing school is one chapter. A failure, even 2 failures, is not the end of your story unless you close the book. And I'm telling you right now, as someone who almost closed the book permanently, keep reading. The next chapter might be the one that changes everything. All right, I want to talk directly to some of you because I know you're out there. To the one who just failed the NCLEX, I see you. I know exactly where you are right now. I know the shame, the anger, the fear, the voice in your head that's saying, maybe this isn't for me, and I need you to hear something that I wish someone had said to me. The NCLEX did not reject you. It redirected you. You need more time, more tools, maybe a different approach. But you do not need a different dream. The dream is right. The path just needs adjusting. Remember, it's in God's timing, not ours. If we're not ready, He won't allow it to come to fruition. It's with His grace that I made it through. He carried me through. I held on to my faith, even though I was mad at Him. But I also realized that it is within His timing. To the ones who've been dismissed from a nursing program or kicked out of nursing school, you are not disqualified. You are being rerouted. And the scenic route, sometimes it gives you a perspective that the direct path never could. Some of the best nurses I know took the long way around. They bring a depth, a resilience, a compassion to the bedside that you can't get from a straight line. To the one with undiagnosed ADHD, anxiety, depression, or trauma, please get evaluated. Please. I lost decades to something that had a name and a treatment. You don't have to. The tools exist, the help exists, but you have to ask for it. And there is no shame in that. None. My husband now is the one that helped bring a lot of these ADHD symptoms that I didn't even know I had to my attention so that I could get help. And I am so grateful for him for that. To the one who's in crisis right now, put this podcast on pause. Pick up your phone, call 988. Text HOME or HOME to 741-741. I will be right here when you come back. But right now, you are the priority. Not this episode, not studying, not the NCLEX. You. Take care of yourself first. Everything else can wait. To the nursing student whose family doesn't believe in them, I became a registered nurse without my mother's blessing. I did it with her laughter ringing in my ears, and I did it anyway. You can too. You don't need permission to become who you were meant to be. You just need the audacity to keep going. And all of this, is why battle-tested nursing exists. I didn't build this platform because I had a perfect story. I built it because I had a painful story. And I realized that my pain didn't have to be pointless. Every failure, every setback, every dark night, every moment where I almost gave up, all of it became the foundation for something that could help other people avoid the same suffering, or at least survive it. Battle tested nursing isn't about me being the smartest nurse in the room. It's about me being the most honest nurse in the room. It's about creating a space where nursing students and new nurses can come and hear the truth. Not the polished Instagram filtered version of nursing, but the real, raw, battle scarred truth. The critical thinking skills that I teach, I built them because the traditional study methods failed me. The mindset work I do, I built it because my mindset almost killed me. The community that I hope that you will help me build, I'm building it because I was alone in my darkest moment, and no one should have to be. If even one person hears this episode and decides not to give up, if even one person pauses and calls 988 instead of making a permanent decision based on a temporary feeling, then every failure I went through was worth it. Every single one. Let me leave you with this. You are not your failures. You are not your diagnosis. You are not your family's opinion. You are not the voice in your head that says you're not enough. You are a warrior. And warriors don't quit when the battle gets hard. Warriors adapt. Warriors pivot. And warriors fall down and get back up. Warriors ask for help when they need it. Warriors fight through fear and doubt and pain and darkness, not because they're not afraid, but because they know what's on the other side of that fear is worth every single scar. We have to face our fears to help overcome them, or at least that has been my motto for my whole life. If I let fear dictate my life, I would have never been able to travel the world. I failed the NCLEX twice. I was dismissed from a BSN program. I was diagnosed with ADHD at 44. I almost didn't survive my journey. And now I'm a registered nurse with a BSN. Now I'm building something that's changing lives. Now I'm sitting behind this microphone telling you, the one who's ready to give up, that it's not over. And it's not over. So put your armor back on. Put up your sword. Wipe the tears off your face. Straighten your crown and get back in that fight. Because you are battle tested. And this is your story too. Thank you for listening to Real Talk with Nurse Mindy, the Nurse Warrior segment. This episode was deeply personal for me, and I'm grateful to every single one of you who stayed with me through it. Before I sign off, one final reminder. If you or anyone you know is in crisis, please contact the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by calling or texting 988. They are available 24/7. You are also able to text HOME or HOME to 741-741 to reach the crisis text line. For ongoing mental health support and resources, contact the NAMI, NAMI helpline at 1-800-950-6264. The content of this episode reflects my personal experience and opinions. It is not medical advice, mental health counseling, or a substitute for professional care. Please consult a licensed healthcare provider for any medical or psychological concerns. If you're connected with this episode, share it. Not for me, for the person in your life who needs to hear it. Send it to the nursing student who's struggling. Send it to the friend who just failed an exam. Send it to the person who's gone quiet lately. You never know whose life you might save with a single share. Follow Battle Tested Nursing on all platforms. Visit us at our website and join our community because we warriors don't fight alone. And let's be honest, I need help building this community. And I can't do that without members to help me build it. In the meantime, I'm Nurse Mindy. I'm a 2-time NCLEX failure turned registered nurse. I'm battle tested, and so are you. Until next time, stay in the fight. Take care of yourself and others, and have a great night.